Hey everybody. See some new faces here. For anybody that's new, we do this weekly community call, and we just kind of chat about what's going on in Astro, what we've been working on, what's coming up for us, some announcements and room for community members to share some stuff if there's time at the end. So yeah, welcome. Today we've got a couple things to chat about. Just wanted to remind everybody the Q4 roadmap still on our RFC's repo. So, we've kind of touched on this the last couple calls, but if anybody is new here, we put out a call for like what feature should we work on, and a lot of these were things that came up. So per page static versus server output is really at the top of the list, hoping to deliver on that this quarter, and some other quality of life things. DX has been going smoothly, lots of bug fixes. There was a large performance regression that just got fixed in 1.4.2 or 3, I think. So if you've been noticing any slowness with your dev server, try to upgrade to the latest. It should help. We're also aiming 4.4. Thank you, Matthew. We're aiming for squashing all those HMR issues and also improving our source maps quite a bit. Erica is working on language tooling, so really getting it as close to TSX feature support as possible. There's been a big PR in the compiler to migrate the language server to use our compiler directly. And also, supporting in browser environments like vscode.dev, and then improving Astro components in JavaScript and TypeScript files. Community stuff has been going really awesome. Dan's going to talk about that a bit more, but just keeping the documentation improvements up, user education. We're working on an interactive walkthrough. And CMS integration guides. So that's really exciting. And also it's Hacktoberfest. So that's been awesome. There have been a ton of new PRs. So we'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to call out, we have an official GitHub action that recently got some updates. So if you are, looking for an easy way to use Astro, can't go wrong with this one. This is basically all you need to write. Just copy and paste this in your repository. And this should... Oh no, did I freeze? Can y'all hear me still?
We can hear you.
Yep. Okay, that's good. I did freeze, but we're good now. Cool. So yeah, there's a GitHub action. We'll kind of set up npm and all that good stuff for you, or even yarn or pnpm, and deploy your site. So that's really nice if you want to deploy to GitHub pages. There's also an official template, so you can just hit use this template, and you'll get all that stuff set up for you. So that's a really nice way to get started with Astro if you're not sure how to deploy. Other big thing going on this month is Hacktoberfest. So this is a yearly thing put on by... Who is it sponsored by? Oh yeah, DigitalOcean, AppRite, Docker. And it's pretty cool. Just encourage people to get involved in open source projects. We have done a big thing in our docs repo. So there's a Hacktoberfest guide, and basically any PRs you can ask for a label that says Hacktoberfest accepted, and we'll add that tag for you, and then it'll count towards Hacktoberfest. So that's really exciting. We're also encouraging like translations and other, less code-oriented contributions. So any documentation, super valuable part of the project. We will definitely accept those kind of contributions as well. I think for the core repo, we're not doing any specific Hacktoberfest guide or tag or anything, but if you want to chat with us about that, please reach out. We'd be happy to support that. So, Dan, are there any other docs updates?
Hey. Yeah, actually for Hacktoberfest, another thing you can do is review an existing PR. So normally that wouldn't count for Hacktoberfest because they require you to make a PR. But if you go and, contribute to the review process of a PR, then you can go to that Hacktoberfest guide and do a PR to that document, and then it will count towards your Hacktoberfest thing. So we have a lot of translation PRs, which is awesome. But the best people to review translation PRs are people who speak the language. So this is a great opportunity for anyone to hop in to review those. Yeah, Sarah says Docs is hacking the system. This is a little bit of a workaround to Hacktoberfest, but we think reviews are really important. We have this new open graph generator that Chris made. So the way this works is if you paste a docs link into Discord or any other social media chat, it will show you a image. And that image has like the title and the description of the page. So yeah, Nate's I figured Nate was gonna try it. Let's see.
I know there's a let's see, Twitter.
You can put it into the Discord chat if you want.
I'm just gonna put it here. Let's see. Preview card. Nothing.
Oh no. Okay.
Let me put it in the chat.
There it is.
Hey,
okay,
that's so cool. That's awesome.
So yeah, huge props to Chris for this. And a nice side effect is that this makes it really easy to notice if a docs page doesn't have the description tag in the markdown. So if you're ever like pasting these around and you don't see a description, you just see a title, there's a good PR opportunity there where you can go and add the description to the front matter. We are trekking on with this tutorial, which is amazing. Sarah especially has been really working on this, and it's a comprehensive beginner tutorial. So we have a lot of people coming, not really knowing, not really at the stage where they can just like jump into the docs and start from anywhere. This gives a starting place and a really nice project where you build a blog while learning Astro features. And we're planning on getting that out to the community by the end of the month. And yeah, we're doing the usual feedback loop stuff where we're trying to get, when people ask about things in support threads, we're trying to get the answers into the docs, basically using the community as a way to improve the docs. And there was an endpoints guide that we put out last week, and we documented the new CSS behavior. We are documenting some SSR, some more SSR routing stuff. And with all of this, the translators are really keeping up, and a special shout out to the Spanish translation team, who are managing to, every time I make a PR, the Spanish team is right on my heels trying to get to their 0 updates needed. So congrats to them.
Woo. Awesome. Thank you so much for the update, Dan. Yeah, that is super cool. I love those display images. Awesome work with that, Chris. I don't think Chris is here, but I will tell him separately. Yeah, those are super fun. All this other stuff is amazing too. Cool. Had a big, you know what? My thing froze again. Man, what is going on? Sorry, everybody. My laptop does not like to stream my video. I was about to open the TSX Sourcemaps PR, which was a huge effort from Erica and myself to get that all working. Hey, there we go. I don't know what happened there. But yeah, this has been merged. It's not released yet, but yeah, the source maps broke my my laptop. So this is really exciting. If you don't know, there's like a bunch of issues in the language server. So the VS Code extension that are going to be fixed by this. So we'll get basically much higher fidelity with how Astro actually works. And internally, this is taking an Astro file and converting it to TypeScript so that TypeScript can give us errors on it and do full type checking and stuff like that. And yeah, here are all the issues it's going to fix. What are we up to? 16? That's wild. That is a whole lot of issues. So this will be really exciting. Right now, the language server kind of converts it to TypeScript, but we're just using a bunch of regular expressions and hacky things. So that's very fun code if you want to go track it down. But really exciting to get this merged in. Yeah, let's see. Also, this was pretty cool. So we have this discussions tab in the RFC repo. Anyone is welcome to open a discussion. There are lots of great suggestions for features. There's kind of a low barrier to entry for suggesting something new. And if it's getting a lot of traction, hopefully we can turn it into a full RFC as a pull request. But this is a really cool one, mostly because it's opened by good old sindresorhus, which is amazing. He's a huge Node NPM ecosystem developer, which is super cool. I guess he's building something with Astro. So, yeah, his suggestion was really neat. Was basically to have like a redirects integration. Or I think he was saying out of the box, but Chris pointed out we could just make an integration that would basically, either work for static or server, and we could generate those Astro redirects calls on the fly, or for static builds, just inject the right meta tag. So I thought that was a super cool idea. I wanted to call that out. If anybody's looking to build an integration, I think this would be a really cool one. And could possibly be like Astro.js/redirect. And then you could do Astro add redirects. And that would be really cool. So I'm going to drop that in here. And if it's an integration, it doesn't have to go through the full RFC process. But could be a really cool one if anybody wants to tackle that. Thought that was really neat. Oh, I almost forgot. Fuzzy sent me a short video. It's about a minute long. Is there audio in this, Peter? Maybe he's gone. Let's see if this opens. All right. I don't know if there's audio. Can y'all see this video here? This is Support Squad Heroes of the week and month. So just wanted to call out. Yeah, hopefully there's no audio. I'll just talk through it. So we've got our new support forums. And here are the heroes of the week. People who've just been super involved, helping out in the support squad. Awesome. Amith, George, Chris, Happy Dev, thank you so much for all your hard work. We really appreciate you all stepping in and helping people out. And then we also have Hero for the Month. This is one hero. Bryce Guy, you've done an amazing job. Thank you so much. We really could not do it without all your help, so really appreciate everybody that stepped up, especially Bryce Guy. Just always being there. And then this is obviously Fuzzy Bear with the stinger. So that's awesome. Yeah, really appreciate all of that. Our support forums are really great and love that new Discord feature. So yeah, a lot of people say Astro has an amazing support experience. So thank you all for jumping in and helping out there. Awesome. I think the last thing on the agenda was the app setup RFC. So I'll definitely get into that as soon as my laptop unfreezes. Embarrassing. Hey, I can move my mouse again. Okay. Cool. So this is a really interesting one. I will present it because I doubt people have gone through it. But the idea here is mostly the fact that Vue kind of creates this like app interface that you can extend with plugins. So a lot of people are used to like having a setup file where you call like app.use, vue.use, or like app.components, things like that. And you can kind of globally define that. In Astro, because each island is its own application, we don't really have a hook into that right now. So this RFC is a proposal for a unified interface so that people can set up their islands basically with some initialized state or something like that. And this will run on the server and the client. Again, Vue use is the big motivation here, but we'll also kind of talk about some other use cases. So cool. So yeah, this can be done almost without any changes to core. But the proposal here is to basically extend the renderer options so that the Vue, in this case, the Vue renderer integration would be passed in app entry point. And this would point to a file, so it receives an import specifier. And then the default export of that file would be a function that receives the app instance and can call app.use and all that stuff. So we can get into it a bit more. Yeah, this is what it looks like on that in that file. So underscore app is very familiar to any Next.js users. Except in this case, we're going to pass it in like directly. We need to specify what the file is, and we'll get into that. Yeah, so this every island that uses Vue would be passed to this. So it's not a singleton, but it does run multiple times. So yeah, that's an important thing that we would need to document. Yes, so more on the motivation. Really hard to hook into the lifecycle. That's kind of annoying if you need like a provider, because you need to wrap every island in those providers. But it also makes like plugins like Vue uses pretty much impossible. So there's no way to do this right now. So yeah, really focused on Vue users right now. In the future, I think React and Preact users could also benefit from this if this returns some providers. So right now, this would work with static data, so like not stateful, but basically any internationalization data, themes, things like that. But yeah, explicitly calling out here, this RFC is not designed to solve the state sharing between islands. So the regular like React context only works if you have a unified root, which we do not have in this case. So mostly focused on Vue use right now, and then possibly in the future React and Preact users. So yeah, there's a bit of the internals, which we can definitely go into. Most of it can happen on the renderer level. So we have this add renderer hook that integrations get, and that interface has like a client entry point, server entry point, and this proposal would add an app entry point that would be exposed from the user, basically be passed through. So yeah, one idea here is that that file should export a default function that should be synchronous or asynchronous. If possible, supporting asynchronous would be awesome because Astro supports that already. So that should be pretty easy. This kind of shows what the new interface would be. The integration receives the app entry point and just exposes that to the renderer. And then internally, we would have a Vite plugin that basically, if we do have an app entry point, will resolve to whatever that entry point is. Otherwise, we'll fall back to basically a no-op function. And again, this gets called for every island of the same framework. So for every Vue island, you would get this setup function called. And then trying to scroll down. Still frozen. Give me a sec. Sorry, everybody. The laptop does not like Discord streaming, I guess.
While we're waiting, would this be implemented just purely by like the Vue render?
Yes.
Is there can be? Okay. Okay. I have thoughts on that when you're done. we lose? Did we lose?
Yeah, he's off. Hopefully he'll be back.
We lost Nate. Well, idea. Perfect time to take this to a vote. Who wants to? Just kidding.
Hey,
There he is.
that was fun.
Too difficult of a question I asked you. I think you were just like, I can't answer this.
I said
I'm just
yes.
kidding. I'm just
This
kidding.
my whole laptop cycled. That was wild.
Well, we voted while you were gone, Nate. I hope that's
Oh,
okay.
cool. Rejected.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay. That's a bummer. So yeah. Yes, that's a great question. This part could totally just be added by the view integration. The reason I was suggesting that this is kind of built into Astro is because then we would have like each renderer could just provide the app entry point and this would be handled for them versus like having many plugins perform basically the same logic. Certainly not required. So that's one way we could go with this, is just have the view plugin do this first. But I was kind of seeing that this kind of makes sense for some other plugins as well. So it might just be cool to build it in. But yeah, basically the way this works on the renderer side is that you'll just import the setup function from this virtual file and then basically pass the app in. So that's on the server side. Similar thing on the client would happen. And then, potentially React and Preact could do the same thing. You'd get like a tree of providers here, and then we would render the providers. So yeah, there's some drawbacks here. I think it's a pretty lightweight feature that doesn't come with a lot of overhead, but it does expose some like lower level control, which is a more advanced use case. I think for most things, it should work, but if you like throw, a million plugins in, your performance is not going to be great. So that's definitely a downside, is it could be a performance foot gun if you're not using it carefully. It's a bit of a different thing than what Next does. So in Next, well, I talk about this in the following section. Basically, it's not pure file-based routing because you actually have to specify where the file is. So people might expect it to be pure file-based routing, but there's some reasons we can't do that. And then, yeah, another drawback, providers are not singletons. So if we were to do this for provider-based frameworks, that would be kind of a foot gun and would be difficult for people to work with because they would probably expect the provider to work for everything. So yeah, some alternatives here. App entry point is a bit of a weird API. Why would we do that if we could just provide a function directly? If you write an inline function in your config file, that would mean that we have to bundle your config file for the client, because this code is going to run on the client and the server. But your config file imports a lot of stuff that should only happen in the client. So it's really hard to split out specific things for that. And yeah, you basically just get like a really big bundle. It's easy to import a bunch of stuff you don't need. So this mirrors a lot of our other entry points based APIs, and it's kind of a pattern we have found to work very well. And then this was about having that app entry point use file-based routing? Like, can we just expose _app, which is what Next does? I would love that, and that's kind of what I initially did. And then I realized, because we're framework agnostic and you can have many renderers enabled, what happens if you have React and Vue, and which one should this app file apply to? It's not really clear. We could do something where it's like a app.vue.js or something, but that just seems a little silly. So better to just be explicit and pass it in your config, and you can put that file wherever you want. And then, yeah, the other option would be kind of hold off on this until we have a way to share state between islands. And the reason I didn't want to do that is because that's originally what I was going for. But it is not super possible with our current architecture. And we're 1.0, so it would be a big mental shift. There'd be a huge migration cost to a breaking change like that. And this RFC still provides a lot of value. So Vue users looking to come from Nuxt or any other tools could still use this pattern. We wouldn't need to break anything just to get this one out there. Hey, Ben might have an idea here, so I'd love to hear that in a second. And yeah, adoption strategy. This is not a breaking change. It's kind of a missing feature. So we could easily do it in a minor, even a minor of just the integrations. And then this is just kind of a pattern for other integrations could adopt it, but are not required to. This is a bit of just like a paving the right path for everyone. So yeah, thanks for listening to me blab about it. If anybody has thoughts, please let me know.
I'm now listening to you describe it. I'm kind of thinking that so you kind of talked about this as being like a life cycle thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe this is going to sound like it's about the terminology, but I don't think it really is. But calling it app entry point doesn't really read as life cycle to me.
Sure.
Like if we were gonna take what this is doing, like you might call this like before hydration or something like that. It's a hook that calls like right before hydration occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding. Calling it app entry point, I think that is like Vue terminology because I think isn't the API like app.use or something.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense from like a Vue user's perspective, but I guess I'm having trouble making a connection to this being like a generic thing. 'Cause even if we were to say well, um, other other integrations can use this, but since the integration is the one that's kind of driving it, right? Like the integration is the one that calls this function. It's really not generic that way. Like a user can't have the expectation that at app entry point gets called at a certain time because another integration might call it at some other life cycle. You know what I mean? So since it's not driven by like the front like Astro client side, it doesn't actually feel generic in that way to me. It feels more like a Vue API.
Sure. Yeah, I think app setup was the other thing I was kind of thinking about, and I even refer to it as like the app setup RFC, but that terminology is not really in here at all. I think, yeah, I think they're similar enough that I see this as the same pattern, but I definitely agree that it's a little different because this doesn't get any arguments, right? Like the interface is not exactly the same. So yeah, is there a more agnostic name here?
Well, but also like you're not proposing doing the second one right now, right? Or are you?
That is correct. I originally was proposing this, but I think it would just be a foot gun for. It would be really hard because you'd expect like state to work, and you'd have to write things in a bit of a different way. So unless, unless Ben's proposal is mind blowing and solves all these problems, we don't.
It will be mind blowing, but
I could see how. Just my last thing. I can see how these are similar in some regards, but if the concern is like they're similar enough that they should reuse the same code, like I feel like once you go to implement the React version of this, like you could make it use a lot of the same code paths. You know what I mean? Like the implementation might be very similar. From the user's perspective, they're implementing the provider API for React or whatever that's called. They're doing the app API for Vue, etc. So it's kind of my final thought.
Gotcha. Yep. So the name wouldn't necessarily be the same to the user. And I get that your point's not necessarily just about naming. Ben, I'm gonna mute you, getting some background noise.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to share a little bit of what was said in the chat about like maybe the word island instead of app would make more sense since they're applied individually by component. Because when I hear app, I think, oh, it'll surround all pages, which means it'll support magical things that it's not intended for.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think I mean, I definitely want to get this in soon, but I don't think, like, given the naming things that are left to sort out, I don't think I have to push for consensus right now. But yeah, if there are...
I would.
Go ahead.
I would not object if this were like a Vue, like almost exactly as you described, but it's Vue. It just Vue's API. We don't try to make it generic quite yet. I mean, from the user's perspective, like implementation wise, maybe there is some overlap. I don't care about that part, but like as far as this being an API, we don't document this as like app entry point being an Astro thing. App entry point is a Vue integration thing, if that makes sense.
Right.
I wouldn't object to that.
Yeah. Dan had a good question. What if there's a plugin you only need on the client? How do you control that? So in the file itself, this would be processed by Vite and everything, so you could use like their tree shaking if import.meta. What is it? SSR, which is not the best naming in the world, but basically you can add that here and change what plugins you're applying based on that. So definitely something we could document. Yeah, Matthew, I think that's a really good point. This is really solving a problem for Vue right now, so probably don't need to make it more generic than that at the moment. So that's certainly a way we could move forward with this as well. I just wanted to make sure. I guess the reason I didn't do that originally is because in that case you might think like some file-based routing thing would work. But since we have multiple frameworks, I kind of wanted to be thinking about what this would look like for every framework.
Is there a corollary like outside of React Vue, like, does Svelte have any concept like this? Does
I think
Lit,
Solid
does
has
Solid?
context. Like I think they're all kind of similar to React context more than anything. I guess
That's kind of a different thing, right? Like React context, you really want to share that between islands. That seems
right.
like a little bit of a different feature.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Vue is the only one I know that has this like .use or .component like global injection. But generally seems like I don't know. I think there's other APIs possibly that makes sense. It's kind of like returning a parent for other things. Uh, component. I was also thinking about like what if you wanted to provide some like user state like on the client or server, could you like fetch if the user is authenticated and then set that so that when you're hydrating on the client you'd already have that state initialized, like yeah, like Dan said, theming is not really a stateful provider. They're just kind of like they just have some data or translations. Like I think internationalization is a big one. Basically just give all of these like a T function that can translate would be very useful.
Another way to think about kind of my objection is like, are we benefiting? Is the community benefiting by this being a common concept? In other words, like, if I am a React user and I want to do this provider thing, am I helped by the fact that Vue also has this thing which is kind of similar but kind of different, perhaps? Or am I just like I'm gonna look for how do I set up my providers? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm a Vue user, how do I set my app? Um, I'm wondering if like documentation wise or just learning wise, like, are we really gaining anything by these having, uh, a shared concept?
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like people probably wouldn't be looking like you wouldn't search for like app entry point as much as you'd search for like how do I set up my providers. Um and that would,
And it
I
makes sense if Astro was doing it, like if Astro was the thing that loaded the setup function, like you could imagine another implementation being that the island actually imports this thing and then
Mhm.
passes it as an argument, right? In
Yeah.
which case, like, it's a lower level thing, and there are reasons not to do it that way. I'm not suggesting we do it that way, but if we did it that way, it would be an Astro concept. It would just be a lower level one. But you'd still have, I think, you would still probably have a higher level API on top of that, or like specifically for the that would look probably almost identical to what you're suggesting,
Yeah.
for like the app use case.
Yeah, I think there's benefit to like doing this part for you. um which is why I was
Yeah.
suggesting, because it's just kind of a pain otherwise. Like we'd be copying and pasting that into like almost every integration. So
Is it? I mean, I could see the no-op being a core thing, just the existence of a no-op virtual module
mm,
that you could just rely on existing. Like, I could see that, but the if condition is like all the logic, right?
yeah,
It's really it's, most of the logic is because it's generic, right? It's really only your inner if exists for each thing that actually does this, right?
right.
That's what the Vue plugin is going to do.
Hmm.
So seems
Yeah, that
okay to
makes
me.
sense. Um, cool. So we don't need an RFC. Is that what you're saying? Go do it.
Oh, I don't think so. If this is just a feature on top of Vue, I don't think we need a RFC for that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And if there's, you know, some similar patterns that we are finding in the future, we can certainly revisit this and abstract it. But yeah, there's nothing that can't be done in userland here. Cool. That makes total sense to me. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, my concern was like if Astro needs to know about this oh, that was the big thing. It's like Astro needs to bundle this at build time, so it needs to know about it. But I guess that like this handles that, right? Because that file is importing this virtual module, which will get resolved.
Yeah, the Vue integration is going to be importing it, isn't it, in the client? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to get pulled in through that.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess that was my main concern, was like making sure that the build process knows about it, which it totally would. Cool. Yeah, thank you all for the feedback. That's super helpful. We'll definitely chat about next steps here, but it seems like this is not necessarily something that needs like a full RFC like we have here. If it's just like a view thing. So that's awesome. Cool. We've got about 10 minutes left. If anybody wants to share anything going on in the community or just mention anything, feel free. The floor is yours. Otherwise, we can call it a couple minutes early. Really appreciate y'all taking the time out of your day to hang out with us, chat about this stuff. It's always fun. Just huge congrats to the Docs team on all the new Hacktoberfest contributors. I love seeing all the activity in the Docs channel. It's a very positive place. Oh yeah, thanks, Dan. There was one last thing. It's funny, I had it in all my other announcements, but I didn't do it this week. I should have. ViteConf is next week, so there are quite a few Astro team members on here that are going to be speaking. I'm chatting about Islands architecture, Astro, and Vue. We basically build a little I don't know. We build a little project with Astro and talk about Islands architecture while we're doing it. Ben's is not Astro specific, but DIY Islands architecture with Vite. Fred is going to be on the frameworks panel showdown where they're all going to fight with each other over who's doing frameworks the best. Oh my gosh, Ben, you rebuild all of Astro in 5 minutes?
All of it.
That's incredible.
Yes.
What have I been doing for a year and a half?
I'm doing yes. It's web components. If people like web components,
people love them. Yes. And then yeah, Dan is doing Vite for education, using Vite in Vite to teach Vite and beyond. So that'll be awesome. And yes, thank you for the shout out, Sarah. Go vote for Ben and the Jammies. Whiteboard the web. Astro, not in the Jammies this year, but we did bring home a trophy last year, so hopefully Ben can bring home one this year. Yes, absolutely. Go vote. Go vote for Ben. Cool. Yeah, hope to see you all. ViteConf is totally remote, so just drop in your email and you can watch it online. It'll be fun. I think we'll be hanging out in the Vite Discord server chatting, so it should be pretty awesome. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Let people go 5 minutes early. Thanks all for hanging out.